Hi, and welcome to the Rags to Riches show with myself, Terry Blackburn. Now, today's guest is a guy called Daniel Hill. He's done quite a lot of things, to be quite honest, in his career, but to give you a little bit of a flavour, he's the founder of the PPN Property Group that does fantastically well. He's won multiple awards in multiple areas, including Entrepreneur of the Year 2018, multiple businesses, which we're going to get into. He's done all kinds of different property strategies, which we're also going to get into. And from what I know, he's got a really interesting story. So welcome to the show, Dan.
How are you doing, Terry? You good?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. Do you prefer Dan or Daniel? Sorry, I didn't even ask.
Dan's good. We're in good company.
Dan's good. Well, thank you for coming on, Dan. I really appreciate your time. Looks like you're a very, very busy man. So I appreciate you coming on today. So what we'd like to do, Dan, is we'd like to just talk about your career so far. So we'll break it down into 3 parts. We'll try and extract as many lessons as we possibly can. Any advice that you can share would be fantastic. And hopefully it'll just inspire and motivate some people that are listening and watching the show. So,
absolutely.
Great. So the 3 parts as the start, just basically how you got into property, how it all sort of started. The middle part is the main part, which is what everyone wants to hear, is the exciting part, the growth part, any sort of key moments in your career, any key learnings, and any sort of highlights as well. And then the last part is just the current part, is what your attention is on right now, what property strategies you're using, where your attention and focus lies at the moment. And again, we'll try and extract some lessons from that. So starting off, just how did you first get into property and business, Dan? If you could share that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So always been in business since literally I was probably about 3 years old. So I've been self-employed all my life, started my first business at 14. And then went on to, when I was at school, I had a mobile disco company. So doing school discos, birthdays. I think most entrepreneurs have been a DJ or something like that, or nightclub promoters at some point.
Are you a good dancer?
I'm actually probably not bad. I probably think I'm a lot better than I am, but I'm normally the first one on dance floor.
Love it.
Did that, and then when I was at school, I had that business, and then also I did that evenings and weekends. But then also when I did my A-levels, I had a few days during the week free between classes, so I've started working on the buildings.
Okay.
So I've done floor screeding, hod carrying, and like dry lining, roofing, whatever. So I knew how to build businesses, knew how to build houses, and I thought I don't want to be the guy physically building the houses. I want to go and be the guy paying the guys to build the business, build the houses, sort of thing. So I decided to go uni, went to university, did a degree and in strategic entrepreneurship. 2 years academic, 1 year placement, and then 1 year back to finish. First 2 years, just like blew the lid off it, socialized, partied, had a great time. Third year, did a year's placement. It was the first job I've ever had employed, and realized, well, basically, within the first like 3 months, I was facing getting fired. So it was the first job I've ever had. They reprimanded me, they disciplined me, and then they were going to fire me. And then actually at the point they called me in for the meeting, the area manager came in and said, we don't know what you think you're doing, but you've increased sales to 2.4 million and we want to give you a promotion. So they promoted me. I won an award for manager of the year. And I was like, this is bonkers. Like, you were going to fire me and now you're giving me awards. And I realized like 2 things. One was, it's not a bad thing about bending the rules. Like, if you know why things are there, you know, there's obviously rules that shouldn't be broken, but others can be bent. And the second thing was, for as long as I can sustain it, I'm never going to work for anybody else ever again. And I thought stuck to that. Went back to uni, thought I'm going to get a degree just in case it goes tits up. So went all guns blazing, got a first class degree in strategic entrepreneurship, and then simultaneously to that started my first trading group, which is a group of companies. We had an events company, we had a clothing company, we did production, we did retail, we did online, we did events, and then scaled that up until 2011, and then sold it. And then 2011, obviously the market collapsed during the GFC, 07, 08. Watched it sort of bottom out, and then knew I was always going to get into property, and then moved into there in 2011. Did my first deal in 2011, and then did 18 deals the second year, and then scaled the company up from there, really.
Okay, cool. Just before we jump into that part, I just want to pick out a few parts of that because that's quite interesting. The thing about when you said you didn't really want to work for somebody else and you went self-employed, that seems to be a really common trait of people who are running big businesses and who are successful. I've always been like, even with my parents, with my partner, but I can't deal with authority. Me, is that something that you've always had from a child? Were you quite like a naughty kid and stuff, or?
I think some people just so yeah, definitely always been rebellious. Always, not
Yeah,
all entrepreneurs are like that. You know, some entrepreneurs like your Warren Buffett's are very compliant, but
yeah,
a lot of entrepreneurs who are going to start new things are often breaking boundaries, pushing against the rules. If you're into like wealth dynamics or human design or any of these profiling things, I'll go into all of those spaces like manifesting generator, dynamic entrepreneur, all that sort of. That's definitely where I sort of operate. And I think some people could just never be self-employed. So I've got a few people. One of my old team members approached me. I said, "It's time to start your own business now," and they said, "There's no way they could ever be self-employed." And I think there's others of us who literally are unemployable and could never be employed. And whether it's
yeah.
an ego thing or an ability thing, you know, I'm sure if I offered you a job, there'd have to be a lot of zeros for you to come and work.
Yeah.
Even if I said it was with me rather than for me, it wouldn't appeal to you in the slightest. You like the freedom, you like the ownership, the control, really. Yeah, I think it's freedom. You work twice as hard and sometimes for half as much, but the freedom you have, you don't care. I've
I
not
love
watched the
that.
clock in 15 years, so or 20 years, so that's a good thing.
Love that. I think that's spot on. And you're right, the Warren Buffett thing. You don't have to be, as maybe it's a misconception, this, you don't have to be self-employed to be massively successful. And you don't have to be that risk taker. You can be in an employed role and work you up and do fantastically well. You don't have to go self-employed to be successful, right?
It's just knowing where you fit in the business. If you think the business
Yeah.
has 4 stages, in the same way that on Profit Entrepreneur, which is the training program we run, there's 4 stages to the seasons. You know, you've got spring, autumn, winter, spring, summer. There's also 4 stages to the business growth. Like spring is when you start the business. That's people like me and you know, trailblazers, go-getters, natural optimists. If we actually knew what would go wrong, we actually wouldn't ever leave the house. But we just don't believe that stuff.
Yeah.
That's the spring. Like we form the business. Summer is the storm, and that's for people who are maybe not that creative, but they're like they're salespeople, they're people. They go out there and light fires. They're your stormers. They grow it. Your normers is the autumn, where the business starts to settle down. It's more like autumnal, and the energy goes into the ground. And they're your more sensory people who, you know, in your insurance company, you've probably got 100 people who are like customer service in the moment, doing the same thing day in, day out, and they just run with it. They're the people who run the business on a daily basis. And then your performers, like your Warren Buffett's, data, analysis, positioning, allocation of capital. They're your winter energies, they're your lords and your steels. And when you know where you fit. Have you ever done any like psychometric profiling?
No, I haven't actually. It's really interesting when you just listen to you there. I think that's a great analogy. And when you were saying it, I was kind of thinking, right, who in my business fits into those different parts. That's a really interesting analogy. That's a really good way of putting it as
Think
well.
about you as a profile. There's a really good profile you can do test. I mean, loads of these you have to pay for. Some of them are free. If you do what's called the Genius U test, it's free. Take you about 60 seconds after the podcast, and it'll tell you which profile you are. And you're probably a dynamo or a blaze. I've only been speaking for 12 minutes, but I suspect you're probably a blaze. But it'd be good
But yeah,
to do that test and let me know.
yeah, no, well, it's interesting. I like stuff like that. And again, it's understanding the psychology behind why things happen and who fits in which part. And each part, I imagine, will have different strengths and weaknesses. You don't want to give somebody who's a summer or a winter task. You want to make sure that you give the right tasks to the right people. That's really interesting. I love that.
And we all think we're all weird. Most people think everybody else is weird. You know, the blazy salespeople think all the people in the office who do admin and finance are just a pain in the ass. They're boring people, and those people are sitting there thinking, those people are sitting there thinking, we're the smart ones. Those guys out there just running around like mayhem, don't know what they're doing.
Just salespeople. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. Love that. It's a great analogy. Thanks for sharing that. But yeah, so we're jumping about a bit, but so let's talk about the growth part. So I think you mentioned there, year 2, you bought 18 units. Is that right?
Yes. What we'll normally do is we focus on what we call strategic positioning. So it's basically looking at every market and finding either a niche or a wave. So a wave is something big that's come in and we get on it early, like at the minute. Not that I'm into it, but at the minute, like crypto or virtual reality or modular building or 3D printing houses, that's crest of a wave. Or niche is, everybody does HMOs, but we do, the HMOs we do are in one postcode. They're C class or C grade or A grade accommodation for C grade tenants. Like that's a niche. So it's a really small part of the market. We'll find a wave or a niche. The idea being it's high margin, low competition. And then literally as quick as we can, just scale it up. And then when we see the market sort of becoming more mature and everybody else getting on the boards, before we hit the beach, we normally exit. Like we'll sell the portfolio, sell the stock, sell the businesses, and then move on to the next one.
Okay. So have you been through multiple cycles of that? So building from scratch, building up to selling it, starting again. Have you done that multiple times, Dan? Is that fair?
Yeah, so done it. So what we teach on Property Entrepreneur is how to start, systemize, scale, and sell a business. And we've gone through that. I've done 2 10-year cycles with different business groups in that sort of scenario. But then within there, we've also bought. We've had little micro cycles as well. So we've bought stock, we've flipped it, we've bought businesses, we've flipped them, we've bought development sites, repurposed them, that sort of thing.
And is it mainly around property, or is it different industries and different sectors as well?
So Pulse Trading Group was my initial group of companies. That was what I won Young Entrepreneur of the Year for, and I built that from 14 to 24. So that was that was about 10-year cycle. Stepped out of that in 2012, and then PPN UK I started in 2012, and I've just exited the majority of those companies. Not the majority of them, but a big of the 15 companies. We've just exited about 12 of them, and that was this year. So that was the end of another sort of 10-year cycle.
Oh well, fair play.
Cheers.
Yeah, I didn't actually know that about you, it fascinates me, stuff like this.
Cool.
So thanks for sharing. So what advice, I know we're jumping around a bit, but I'm just going to run with it. So in order to sell a group of companies or be acquired, what advice would you give on that? Are you starting with the end in mind? Is that always the plan from the outset? Or just what general advice could you give to someone in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about wealth creation, so if you actually want to be wealthy, like genuine financial independence, I'm not talking about Ferraris and helicopters, I'm talking about generational wealth, is you need to be highly strategic about what you're building. And there's 3 layers to wealth. I did a podcast on this. I can't remember what it was called. I think it's called The Blueprint. And it's on the official Property Entrepreneur podcast. If you want to listen to it, there's 3 layers to it. And the first is cash flow. The second layer is profit. And the third is asset. So the first protocol with any entrepreneur is cash flow, is as quickly as possible get to a break-even point. And these big cash flow businesses are noisy. They've got loads of people. They've got loads of overheads. It's like your insurance company. It's a noisy business. It makes loads of cash flow, but it pays for the internet and it keeps the lights on. It pays for the cars and pays for the insurance and stuff. So that's cash flow. Do that for as long as you need to get the business running on rails and buy back your time. To then start that, cash flow businesses are just P&L businesses. So in the main, they're just profit and loss every month, kicking out money. Once you've started to do that and you've got your cash flow sorted, then move into profit. So if you think about cash flow strategies like HMOs or serviced accommodation, great to live off, ball ache to own. You then move into profit strategies, which take longer and you wouldn't want to pay your mortgage with them. But when the money comes, it comes in big chunks. So this would be like flips. A flip might take you a year, but it could make you 100 grand. Or a build to sell development could take 2 years, but it'll make you £1 million. That profit is where you start to move from profit and loss to balance sheet, where you're increasing your net wealth every year by making, when you get started, 50 to 100 grand. When you're pressing on with it, like $500,000, few million quid a year in profit, large capital events, actually chunks of cash. And then what you want to do is use those chunks of cash to move up to buy assets, which are really low risk, low return, single let blocks of flats, blocks of bedsits that you build and lease out to the council for 20 years. And it's just knowing how to move through those strategies. And if you're building a business to create wealth, but actually it's a cash flow business, and that's all it is, it's going to take you a lifetime, because, you know, 80% of it's paying everybody else. And then, you know, it's just not the way to create wealth. If you have a profit business, which is like developing, selling, flipping, deal sourcing, we do M&A, so we sell companies for people. And it might take a year to sell a company, but when you do, you make 100 grand or £250,000. It's chunks of cash. And then assets is, if you want to build a business to sell, it has to actually have a value. So your life insurance company will probably have a really strong asset value, because you've probably got 100,000 clients, which you all make 20 quid off each of them, and you could just sell that book, and, you know, there'd be good asset value in it. Whereas something like a consultancy business, where, you know, people pay 100 grand a year to be a consultant, when, you know, when you stop, the whole thing stops and there's nothing to sell, because it's just, no, it's just you. So it's build it. If you want to build a business to sell, it's making sure that it's worth something, and then it's just understanding where the market is, sell it on its way up rather than the way down. Make sure you know what you're selling. You can sell a business that's making £1 million profit a year, but it could be worth nothing. Equally, you could sell a business which is making zero profit, but you could sell it for 10 million quid. It's like just really working with somebody who knows what they're talking about to position it. There's a few sort of like bits of insight for you.
I think that's interesting. I think certainly what I see online, loads of people are shouting about property, but not too many people are shouting about business. And the ROI in a business is a hell of a lot higher than property. But it's quite interesting that I've never heard it positioned the way you said it. You doing properties and other businesses to then buy low risk properties. I've never really heard that sort of strategy said like that before.
So the aim of the game there is, if you think you've got, so if you use property strategy, service accommodation, you've got 10 service accommodation flats, absolute ball ache, you know, they're ringing you at 2 o'clock in the morning, pissed up, lost the keys. It's fine, it gets you going, but you would never be able to retire on that. But if you can use that to pay your salary and then do one flip a year and make 100 grand, and then use that 100 grand to buy 3 single lets a year, after 5 years or 10 years, you end up with what we call your financial fortress, which is 50 single lets, which are rented out for, you know, my rule of thumb is, if I can make 8% return on investment, each single let making 250 quid, once you've got every 50 of those you get is 100 grand a year and £1 million equity, you could retire knowing that those single lets are going to run forever. Whereas if it was like service accommodation or trading Bitcoin or HMOs, it's not, it's quite a high anxiety sort of business.
You've got to be involved in it, yeah. The best definition of a business, I don't know if you're familiar with Brad Sugar, is that action coach guy. He says that the definition of a business, and someone said this to me a good few years back, and it really stuck with us, was the definition of a business is a commercial and profitable enterprise that runs and grows without you, as in the founder, the director. And up until that point, it was all me, all of Bespoke, all the different businesses, and everything was all me. And I thought, shit, it's not even a business. So then the systems and processes come into, then you remove yourself a bit, and as long as it still runs and grows. But I think so many people fall into that trap, and you said it there, like a consultancy business, they are the business, but they think they have a business and they don't, do they? They don't have a business. They might have a high cash flow in one, like the bottom, like you say. I love that analogy. Of getting into the low risk. Out of interest, when you're buying the lower risk, I'm assuming you've done this, buying the low risk ones at the top, are you still using debt then? Are you still mortgaging these, or with the capital events, are you buying them out, or what's your sort of plan?
Obviously, it depends on your risk profile and where you are. I'm just going to move because a couple of people come in. It depends where you are in your journey. So, for example, I'm quite happy using mortgages. So I use 75% loan to value mortgages to purchase the single lets. Like that works for me. I'm happy with that. Whereas I've got a few clients that have maybe, I've got one client that lost money when Lehman Brothers went down. So the idea of working with a bank to him is just alien. He would never do it. And I've got another one who's been bankrupt before. So his whole thing is he wants everything unencumbered. I think it's where you are on your journey. But when I built my first financial fortress, they were like high density blocks of flats, like 15, 20, 50 flats. high density, and then leased out to housing associations. That was fine, it did the job. But now I'm looking at it thinking, right, well, if they bring in minimum house sizes or the market changes, so now I'm doing another one which is called basically just single lets, 3-bed semis, 8% return on investment with 75% mortgage, just to continually reduce that risk.
I love that. It's just a really intelligent way of looking at it. I feel like it's a kind of vibe that I'm getting from you. That, you know, I think there's unfortunately a lot of people online who perceive to be something that they're not, certainly around property. And half of them, they're just buying as many properties as they can. They're not really thinking about the next step and the step after that. And like you say, they're just creating anxiety, stress, high pressure for themselves, aren't they? Yes, it might be cash flowing well, but are that many people really thinking about the next step and the step after? If they're not,
are they really cash flowing well? That's the other thing. Probably not.
Well,
yeah. I know more people who've got a small portfolio of 5 HMOs making more money than people who've got 500 HMOs. Because it's like you need to know what you're doing. And there's a big difference between being rich and being wealthy. Right? Being rich is everybody else thinking you've got shitloads of money. Being wealthy is you don't care what other people think. But you know that you're absolutely sorted.
Yeah. Love that. I think it's a really, I like your approach because it's different and it's sensible. It's an intelligent way of looking at it, I feel. And it's not being short-sighted. I feel there's a lot of people out there who are very short-sighted, that all they're looking at is the next property, the next deal, the next angel, you know, when in reality you need to be thinking a few steps ahead. Who is it that says that you should think 7 steps? Is it that Patrick David? I'm sure he's got a book on 7 steps or something, which I found really interesting. So maybe similar to what you guys do.
Yeah, I think it's it's finding the sweet spot. It's understanding that more revenue does not mean more profit. Like when you're scaling a company, like we did a roll up with letting agencies, and at 200 units making 40% profit, at 450 units making about 35% profit. So it was great. From 400 to 600 units, we were losing 18 grand a month, because it's like, to have a big company, you know, you have to have the overheads of a big company before the revenue. And Seth Godin talks about the dip. Like whether you're doing a body transformation or you're scaling a company, you put the money in, you go into losing money. I mean, hopefully you come out the hockey stick. And then when we got it up to like 1,000 units, it was back making profit again. So it's like, yeah, it's understanding that more revenue doesn't mean more profit. More growth doesn't always, in fact, most times doesn't mean more money. And actually there's a commercial balance for every business. And it's figuring out where that is, remember like common denominators and fractions at school. So you got to find the one where all the line, everything dots up lovely and it makes the money. That's the sweet spot.
Love that. Great. No, great advice. And thank you for that. I'm sure people listening can relate to some of that, or might have just made them think a little bit different, a little bit of a light bulb moment. Actually, what's the next step? Am I looking at this properly? Am I at the bottom of that hockey stick? Analyze. You seem very analytical, although you're a Blaze type guy. I think you said you still seem quite analytical as well. Out of interest, well, first of all, I suppose, how many businesses are you involved in right now? And then I've got some questions around business, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So not a huge amount. So I've just sold Multi-Let UK. That was 10 companies that we were running. Head office in Nottingham, 8 offices around the UK. Just sold that. I've got Property Entrepreneur, which is our business in property training program. So we have a program where people do their first year and learn all this stuff that I'm talking about. Then once they understand and they've put that into their business, they come on to advanced and work with me, and I'll show them how to actually start to scale it up or reposition it. And then we have the board, which is the top level, which are the businesses I actually work with. So we've got Property Entrepreneur, got PPM Portfolio Builder. We build high cash flow portfolios for high net worth individuals. I've then got my development group of companies, which is, I've got quite a few companies in there, but they're basically just different sites. So just building out, just finished a block of 14 flats, turned a factory into 14 apartments, just about to complete next week on an office block that we're turning into about 58 apartments, and looking at another one to put 30 apartments in. So that's my sort of development company. And then I've got my holding company, which just does all my investments. So I invest and work in other companies. I've got a group of what I call our incubator businesses, where I take a smaller fee. If sometimes I do non-exec work for people and I'll work with their business, but I prefer to do incubator models where I'll take half the fee that I would normally charge, but 20% of the shares. So then there's like real skin in the game. And if it goes well, we're both going to do well. If it doesn't go well, then we both feel the pain. That's what we've got. My main thing at the minute for next year is just to retire, just to chill out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just do 10 till 2, 3 days a week for next year. That's have a sabbatical for a year. I'm still doing investments. I'm still buying developments, but yeah, I've been doing this for my whole life, and I just need to make sure there's nothing else out there before I go again.
Yeah, fair play, man. Do you think you'll manage? The people I've spoke to are older than us. Said when they retire, that they've tried to retire multiple times and they really struggle. Do you think you'll manage it? Are you ready for it, or do you think you're going to be a short retirement straight back in?
Well, I'm Property Entrepreneur every year, so we spend 3 months doing strategy, and in that we come up with loads of different things for the next year. And one of them is called the year of, and then you have 3 personal objectives and 3 professional objectives. And one of my personal objectives for next year is get a life, which is like hobbies, friends, family. Like I'm so obsessed with my work or addicted to my work. Everything else comes second. So I'm just going to try and get a life and see if I, maybe do a bit of traveling, learn to play the piano, like do lots of different things. And the likelihood is I'll be sitting there afterwards and be like, fuck this. Like, I need to go back and do some deals. And I need my adrenaline to go back, but I need to check that I'm not just addicted to the adrenaline.
Yeah, because I think that's it. That's a good thing to do as well. If you've sacrificed everything for work, it's.
What sort of life do you have outside of business?
Say again.
What sort of life do you have outside of business? How active is your personal life?
Yeah, so it's full on my personal life. To be fair, and this is only recently because I was a bit similar to yourself in terms of probably. I don't know. I mean, I've got 2 kids, 8 and 4. Theo's nearly 5. But at the start, when Ellie was first born, like it's one of my regrets. I was too focused on work, and I do regret not spending enough time with my daughter. Massively, a couple of relationships have broke down due to me working too much. And I met my current partner. I met Louise a year and a half ago, and she's in business as well. And I don't know, I just changed when I met Louise because I thought, why am I pushing this hard? Why am I working 12-hour days and just doing all this? What is the actual point? If you've got loads of money, if you've got no one to spend it with or on, then what's the point? So now I've got 2 kids. I've got a stepson. So they're pretty much full on most weekends. And yeah, I try and do stuff. I haven't got any real hobbies, man. I don't play sport no more. I don't do anything like that. So it is just work, family, and then socializing. But I found I'm probably getting more done at work now with a better balance. Whereas I feel that previously I was just so full on. But I think when I was full on in terms of hours, I don't think those hours were fully productive. Now I've tried to kind of discipline myself to the hours I'm at work, really, really efficient, productive hours, and still make time for everyone else. So that's mine, but I've been there, and I definitely couldn't take a year off. Fair play if you can do that. I just couldn't do it. I love my holidays. I think it's essential. I say to my staff, like, instead of you working 52 weeks in a year, if you worked 48 weeks of the year and had 4 weeks holiday, I think you'll achieve more. Because the week before holiday, me personally anyway, I cram loads of work into that week before. And then as soon as I'm back, I'm refreshed and recharged and on a mission. And then I do 2 weeks work and 1 week when I get back. So I think holidays, personally, I think they're essential for business, me. That's my thoughts.
On Property Entrepreneur, we have 2 mantras. Well, we've got loads, 1,000,001 mantras, but 2 that relate to what you're saying. One is time off is a requirement, not a luxury. Because if you take that time off, even just the weekends, if you take Friday, Saturday and Sunday off, by the time it gets to Sunday afternoon, you're twiddling your thumbs, you're ready to go again. It's like, bang, looking forward to getting back to work. If you don't, you're just constantly at this sort of slogging pace. So it's a requirement, not luxury. And then, what was the other one that you were saying about? To increase output. So to be more productive, to increase output, reduce input. Because if you've got less hours, if you've got 4 hours to work in a day, your head's down, you're through it, you're getting it done. If you know that you can start whatever time you want and finish whatever time you want, you'll drag yourself to your desk at 5 a.m. You'll sit there sharpening your pencils and flicking through social media and like, oh yeah, I've got some WhatsApps, better jump on that. Yeah, so if you actually want to become more productive in your hours, reduce the amount of hours and you just you squeeze it in.
Yeah, man, love that. But everyone think because of this social media stuff, and there's so many people shouting about the grind and the hustle and all this, work all these mad hours. You don't need to work that many hours. You don't need to work 12 hours a day. You don't. It's probably not very good for your health. If you're not exercising, not eating well, and just, sacrificing your own well-being and your health for the sake of earning some money, I don't think that's healthy, mate. But I think a lot of people do it. I've done it for sure. And I think probably people are listening. You do, don't you? Because you're so driven and determined and focused, and you want to achieve all these amazing things.
Elon Musk says as well, though, it's like there is a degree where the diminishing returns starts to taper off, but also you can work smart or you can work hard. But if you can work smart and hard,
yeah, definitely.
There's no way as a group of companies we would have achieved what we had without being smart and without working hard. Because it's 50 years worth of work, but we did it in a decade. So it's like, we call it beast mode on Property Entrepreneur. It's like when you go into beast mode, it's literally it's this whole strategy to get your calendar and like how to play the game with yourself, how to work by reward, how to be productive. And one of the companies I'm a non-exec for, just going into a worldwide expansion, and their director at the minute is in beast mode. So I'm looking at his calendar, and every single 15-minute slither is like booked out. And I'm even like picking through them, like, right, that needs to go to your EA, that needs to go to your PA. And we're just trying to make sure that every second that he's grinding, he's pushing forward. Equally, as entrepreneurs do 100 hours a week, achieve nothing. So smart and hard.
I love that. And I've heard that, I think it was Gary Vee said that in it, that it's smart and hard. And it can be done. It can definitely be done. The diary, you mentioned there, 15-minute chunks. I think that's essential. If you set up your days like that, you can achieve more, and not like if you've got an hour-long meeting, taking an hour and a half, an hour and 15, because that over a day compounds and you've lost the last meeting. Do you think you mentioned it as well? There's social media. I mean, just delete that Facebook app off your phone, because that is the biggest distraction. Turn off the notifications. That's the biggest distraction of all.
Entrepreneurs as well, it's like email. Like email is not an instant messaging platform. You don't need email on your phone. I don't even run an email account. My EA and my PA run my email accounts. It's like, you don't need to be in there. It's you don't need to be in there deleting messages from Spotify about Ed Sheeran's just released his new album. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're better off doing something else.
I must admit, I'm guilty of, not the Spotify, but I'm guilty of emails. I haven't got the notifications on, but I regularly find myself dipping in and out. And I know I should just do them once a day or have someone else doing it for us. But I still dip and I still fall into some bad habits. And I do. Last time I done that, there's an exercise, the 15-minute chunks, when you try and map out what you've done for 2 weeks, breaking it down into 15-minute chunks. And I identified, this was a couple of years ago, I was spending 2 to 3 hours a day messing about on emails. And when I found that out, I was like, Jesus. So I deleted it, but I'm still slipping back into it. So you just give us a bit of a kick up the arse there as a bit of a reminder to stop. Honestly,
that. Like, no disrespect to people who run inboxes, but it's a 15 to 20 pound an hour job. And once somebody's been doing it for 12 weeks, they'll understand how to work your inbox. And there's a thing called the task triangle. I'm literally launching it. The episode is being launched on my podcast today called Task Triangle. Listen to it. It's on the official Property Entrepreneur podcast. And it talks about this triangle where at the top is high value, and then it's medium, and then it's low value. Think about an inbox as an example. The top one is the decisions and the direction. So something comes in and you're like, do I want this guest on my podcast? The answer is yes or no. You don't have to read 20 emails and 20 CVs and like, do you know what I mean? It's it's getting stuck into that. I've got a question for you, which I'm really interested in, is about kids. Is obviously as entrepreneurs, but I was chatting to my partner about this last night and saying, do I regret the last decade? Like, so I'm 35 now, and I was thinking, one of my things is like, when do I start a family? And I was chatting to my partner last night and just saying, I've committed the last decade to achieve the ultimate independence, which I've now got, which is great. And I wouldn't regret that. And like to have that trade off to not start a family till I'm in my 30s, I'm quite content with. But equally, when is the right time? How have you found, what would your advice to me be around starting a family? Do you recommend having kids? How does it actually fit in reality? The mistakes people make, the success they have. What would your insight be?
It's harder than you think it'll be, for sure. It's very hard. There's no getting, anyone who says it's not hard having kids is full of shit, in my opinion. Sorry if I'm not bothered about this one, to be fair. But yeah, honestly, it is very, very hard, but it's unbelievable at times. Like, it is unbelievable at times. And you're obviously good at coaching and teaching people. I can tell that. And you do that as part of one of your businesses. Teaching your kids stuff is one of the most rewarding things I've ever found. Like when they say lines back to me that I say about money or about property, about something, it's so rewarding. Like, not that I'm bothered about how many properties I've got, but I've heard my daughter say to her friends on FaceTime, my dad's got a hotel, my dad's got these, and they're like, really, Ellie? Really, your dad's like, it's just so, they're amazing in so many ways. When's the right time? I think that's impossible to say.
How old were you when you had your first one?
So I'm 32 now. So what's that? 24 when I had Ellie. But I had Ellie like 3 months after I set up my first business. So, but I had wheels in motion to set up the business, and then my ex-partner got pregnant. So it wasn't ideal timing. But at the end of the day, you just make it work. It's very hard. The first one's definitely the hardest. Second one's a lot easier because you know what to expect. But I think there's pros of having them early because you get your life back earlier, don't you? And there's pros of having them later, like yourself, because you're in a great financial position. You'll be able to give more, and you've got more time now by the sounds of things. And imagine if you try to have children at 25 when you're running all these businesses, and you probably couldn't have, or wouldn't have even wanted to commit much time to them. And kids need time. They need quantity of time, not quality, I believe. You give them quality time as well, and you take them nice places and all that, but it's just even sitting on the sofa with them, putting the phone away and just being present with them. I think kids, like I've heard my kids, and this is horrible, I've heard my kids say, Dad, you're always on your phone. And you're like, oh, fuck. It hits you hard, that, like. But I want more kids. Not right now, but I want more kids because going back to one of the first things you said about the generational wealth, why are you really doing it? I want my kids to have like an abundance of everything. Not that I want to gift them everything, but I want to instill values in them so they can continue the work that I'm doing in the businesses and the properties and all that. So yeah, long answer.
That's good. That's great. Honestly, all of that's what I value. Yeah, Elon Musk's just had another kid. So he had his obviously like four sons. Then he had another kid like last year in his 40s, mid-40s. And he said it's like the best thing to do as an older parent, because as an older parent, you just enjoyed it. Yeah. He just said there was a lot of value in it. So I think if you do decide to go again, I think it'll be a very different experience. And maybe not a better experience, because you never say that, but like
different. Yeah. Like if I had another son or daughter now, I feel like I'd be better because you evolve. People like us, you evolve and you constantly self-develop yourself, don't you? And you think differently as you progress in your life and your business. And I just feel that one thing I will do, I'll get a nanny. Because if I have a number 4, like I've got 2 and then a stepson, if I have a number 4, I need a nanny. That's one thing that I will need. But yeah, I think I'll be a better dad. Not that I was a bad dad to my kids, but I think I'll be better. So I wish you luck with it, man. I'm sure you'd be a great dad, and
thank you.
You'd be able to give him or her, a lot, a great quality of life, and that's amazing, isn't it? Really.
I think so. I think it's one of those things. It's like one of my biggest values is freedom. It's the idea of having a kid is completely contrast to that. But then also you look at the logics. I think the best way I've summed it up, because I've never really wanted to have kids, but I like the concept of having kids. And I look at people who've had kids. Like my brother always wanted to be a parent. So always wanted to be a parent. And he's like the most amazing dad ever. And I just never understood the sacrifices he made. I said, like, but obviously everyone says once you've had kids, it's the most amazing thing. Everyone does it, but on face value. So I don't understand how you can make all those sacrifices and be so happy about it. And he said, well, let me flip it on its head, because you're an entrepreneur and you employ people all around the country and you take on millions of pounds worth of risk every year and pay hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of overheads every month. I have no idea why you sacrifice all of that stuff to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, that's fair enough, isn't it? It's like, why do we do that? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense.
That's a really good point. It's two completely different outlooks, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're both exactly the same. Like what you prepare, like desire equals sacrifice. If you desire something, you want to be 7.5% body fat, you want to bulk up, you want to make £1 million, whatever you desire, you can have as many desires as you want. You've got to appreciate every single desire basically means sacrifice. And it's like, if you want to be a parent, your desire's got to be more than the sacrifice. If you want to be an entrepreneur, it's exactly the same. So
love that. I think that's bang on as well, because too many people want all this success and all the wonderful things over here, but they're not prepared to pay the price or do the sacrifice, make the sacrifice of it. Love that. Great episode so far, loving it.
Cool.
Okay, so just pulling it back a step. So what's your attention on right now, Dan? What is your focus on business-wise? Any industries or niches that you feel are really, really exciting or prosperous going forward? What's your attention on right
Cool.
now?
So probably two sides to the coin. So one is strategically what's going on in the market. I'll give you an insight to that and let you know what we're doing or what we're investing in, things like that. Okay. And then personally, what I'm focusing on. So business-wise, to start off with, we're focusing on the bottom of the market rather than the top of the market. So the way the economy is, all sorts of reasons, I think the bottom end of the market for the next few years is going to be far more active. So we're doing a lot more deals. One of my companies has just signed a £33 million contract with a housing association to deliver supported living. We've done more stuff with homelessness, refugees, asylum seekers, emergency accommodation. We're focusing more on that sort of social space because it's just very active. The top end of the market where we used to operate, boutique, £1,000 a month, 6 studio apartments. That's the top bit of the market. I think it's really sensitive. So we pivoted during lockdown and just repositioned. That's doing as well. All of the new MA that's come in, MA planning, anything in there like repositioning or repurposing E-class under PD, especially if you're going up to like 15,000 square foot. Like the one we're completing on 1st of December is 29,500 square foot. So it's just 2 sites of PD and you're getting 58 apartments in there. If you can get, we're buying at say £40 a square foot, developing at like 75. And, it is realistic to be making, the last one we just completed, just refinanced last month. We refinanced out, no money left in, and the return on investment was about, I spent 1.1 million on it. It's worth 1.8, so whatever that is. It's crazy. The margins are ridiculous when you know how to play that game. So that works really well. Just
before we jump ahead, could you? Some of the people listening might not understand that. Could you maybe just explain what you were doing there, the PD stuff and the E-class? Could you just explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So
that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. When you want to change the use of a building, you can often create a margin by buying it from something that's not very well utilised in a community and repurposing it for something that's in high demand. An example over the last 8 years has been office blocks. We had a load of empty office blocks after 07, 08. So the government came in and said, look, there's loads of empty office blocks, there's no houses. Rather than have to get planning permission, we're going to introduce what's called PD, which stands for permitted development, which means without getting a full planning application, you can buy this site with the confidence that you can convert it into resi or residential. So that works, that permitted development basically de-risks the process. So you can buy stuff unconditionally. Gone.
Sorry, I need to plug my laptop in. Absolute rookie error because it's just saying low battery. I'm really sorry. Give us literally 1 sec.
I'll just carry on talking.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
The sound. So PD allows you to develop without full planning permissions. That's permitted development. What happened in 2020 was the government wanted to relax as part of Build Back Better, which is the government scheme, the government strategy for this recovery. They've introduced another level of permitted development. It used to just be certain classes like B1 or B1C, which was office blocks or light industrial. But now they've got what's called the E class, which they took all of these things that, community centres, gyms, office blocks, light industrial, put them all into E class. Now any business, any building that's in E class, you can convert into residential with MAPD, MA permitted development, which means turning things like, I've just bought a business centre, turning that into flats, or a gym, turning that into flats, or doing a demo like for like. There's loads of new stuff. Some of it's really easy, some of it's really complicated, but that's a good thing to focus on. It just de-risks your strategy, really, and it can be highly lucrative.
I love that. Again, it's being creative, it's thinking different. It's not just going down the conventional route. And I think the property market, a lot of people want to be property investors, don't they, these days? I think it's the cool thing to be, isn't it? Being an entrepreneur and being a property guy is cool. But if there's that many people trying to buy buy-to-lets and HMOs, going down a different, more complicated route.
You want to observe the masses and do the opposite. Like if everybody's doing it, there's high competition, low margin. If you go and find something that nobody else is doing, there's low competition, high margins. That's it. When everybody else knows about it, when I'm writing about it in magazines and doing things like that on it, like if it's in the magazines and at the networking events, you've already missed the boat. You want to be finding that wave in the background nobody else has even heard of, like 3D printed houses or virtual reality headsets that are going to work in the metaverse, all these sort of things. I mean, it's complete bonkers to me, but that's the sort of stuff you want to be looking at. It's no interest.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that, man. I love that. Any other property strategies that you're doing at the moment, or you feel it's good going forward?
So if you're doing cash flow, you want to be doing like back-to-back leases or pop-up service accommodation. They're booming areas. Profit would be flipping resi houses. So buying resi houses and using PD, so permitted development extensions, side extensions, loft conversions to make yourself 50, 100 grand on a flip. And then asset strategies would be using MA to do build to rent. So just doing yourself a block of 6, 20, 100 apartments or little houses and renting them out. They're the main property strategies that I'd recommend at the minute. And then the other space, which is business in property, which is more what we focus on, is because you can have property, but if you have a business in property, you've got two margins. So if you run a HMO portfolio, that's one margin. If you own a HMO portfolio agency, you've then got another margin, and the margin that you can sell as well. The other area that's very active at the minute is M&A, mergers and acquisitions. We've done, in the last 12 months, or by Christmas, we'll have done, I don't know exactly how many deals, I think probably 15 deals, 15 companies that we've bought or sold. In fact, most of them sold for myself and for other people. And the total value on those is, those deals that have gone through is like 9.1 million in like less than a year. The mergers and acquisition space in worldwide has just cleared 3.1 trillion. So for the first time ever, mergers and acquisitions globally within a year has cleared 3 trillion. So it's like a very, very active space. The logic is, in a boom market, everyone invests in their business. They recruit people, they grow, they borrow money. In a recession, everyone's nervous. So there's loads of money, but nobody's doing anything with it. That's what we've got at the minute. There's so much cash everywhere, especially in the UK. It needs to go somewhere. So what you're seeing is people are buying companies rather than building them. And if you see, when the market's hot, when the venture capitalists are coming in and buying Sainsbury's, Morrison's, all these big companies are going up for sale. It's a very active space. And I've sold quite a few, but sold maybe like well over a dozen businesses this year in that space. So they're the areas that I'd recommend.
That's interesting. Okay. So just a couple of specific questions I had for you. We talked about your career, which is unreal, by the way. Fair play to what you've done.
Okay.
I looked, when I was doing my research on you, I liked something that you said about there's no problems, only solutions. I don't know if that's one of your mantras that you mentioned, maybe. I resonated with what you said. Say a similar thing to some of my sales staff, but could you explain that mantra, that saying, and what you mean by that? Because I think that's definitely something that people will be able to relate to on the listening.
Yeah, so there's so many mantras that we use, and I think this is one that genuinely you should tell your kids, tell your parents, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your employees. And it's one of those ones that when you get it, it changes your life. And the concept is there's no problems, only solutions. So if you spend all day looking for problems, you're going to spend all day feeling like crap, feeling negative, overwhelmed. If you just think, oh my God, another problem, oh my God, another problem, that comes with the territory. Whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur, as a human being, the world is full of problems. Don't focus on the problems, focus on the solution. And the fact that there is no problems, only solutions. Problems just don't exist. So, okay, this challenge has emerged. What's the solution? And when your team can focus on no problems, only solutions, in the office all day, every day, they're talking about solutions. It's a positive. Over the water cooler, over their coffee, they're talking about, there's that whole thing about great ideas, great minds discuss ideas, average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. It's like,
Yeah, I like that.
You want to be a great mind, and it's about positivity, it's about solutions, it's about moving forward. There's another good quote as well. This is not one of mine. Where we're talking about negative people want to be negative, and some of them have the ability to change. Some of them will never change because they love negativity the same way we love positivity. And you want to know who's worth investing your time in and who is not, because, and this is the quote, is bees don't waste their time trying to convince flies that honey tastes better than shit.
See that one again? I love that. I'm going to put a caption on that. See it again?
So bees don't waste their time trying to convince flies that honey tastes better than shit.
Love that. Bang on that. Love that analogy.
So it's like
right,
no problems. Yeah. So
that.
it's like no problems, only solutions is a mindset to allow people who get overwhelmed by problems to remember that there is no problems. They don't exist. There's only solutions. And the thing doesn't stop with the problem. It starts with the problem. And then if you give people that and they still choose to focus on the problems, then you know that actually, you know, you've got your bees and you've got your flies, and you want to surround yourself with bees, unless you're a fly.
Love that, man. Love that. And it is, you're so right. People just think, there's another phrase, I don't know what the percentage, I think it was life's 80% how you react, it's only 20% what happens to you. But everyone thinks it's the other way around. It's people think, oh, it's all about stuff will happen to you and you can't control it and all this, and they're focusing on the problems, and it's only a little bit how you react. But how you react is finding the solution, isn't it? And people have got it a lot worse than us and still achieved more than us, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's having that mindset, and it's constantly understanding that most of your assumptions, like, challenge your assumptions and challenge your perceptions, because most of them are wrong. And it's like, if you can just constantly look at the things that you believe are true. You know, Terry's walking around living his life based on this script that's in his head, his beliefs, things like that. When you can really challenge them, like last year, I was like, right, one of my assumptions is that I have to work hard because I've always had a work ethic. I've always been a grafter. Why is that? And I spent a year trying to figure it out. And then I went and got hypnotized. And they took me back to my childhood. And it turned out it was about my parents' expectations, or my father specifically, about my father's expectations. And then when I went out and challenged it, spent about 6 months challenging it, I realized actually it's not true at all. Like, he just wants me to be happy. This thing was my ego that got me to where I am, was now starting to hold me back and not serve me anymore. And then when I broke that down, the result is I'm taking a year off, which a year ago I'd never have done that, because I'm like, I wear my work ethic as a badge of honor. You know, I am a grafter, I'm a grinder, I'm up earlier than you, I go to bed later than you, I achieve more than you. But now I'm like, take pride in the fact I'm having a year off, whereas I never would have done that before because my mindset was wrong.
So that again, I'm sure that people can resonate and relate to that, for sure. No, thank you for sharing. That's great. The hypnotist thing interests his mind. I've heard a few people say that now, how they can take you back and find the root cause, and then when you remove that, it changes the way you think.
But there's 4 layers. If you think about this is like really advanced stuff, but I was going to say, so the business side, I give you the development stuff. The personal stuff I'm focusing on is like my spirituality and my soul and like the softer things in life, you know, all the woo-woo stuff. And one of the things we teach on Property Entrepreneurs about the theatre of life is the fact that we're all watching the same screen, which is our life. but there's 4 sections to the audience. And the first is just the body. It's turning up, walking around, being a functional person. You've not got any awareness at all. You're just a robot. The next is the mind. So it's your education, it's your understanding, it's your perceptions, it's your psyche, it's your anxieties, it's the way you think. That's the second layer. If you can move back, you can be a bit more conscious, but still, you've not got any control. After that is the spirit. And it's like, why are you actually here? Who are you? What are your values? What do you get value from? What gets value taken away? Like, what is your spirit? What drives you? What gets you going? Where's your energy come from? And then the back is the soul. It's like, why are you actually here? If you believe you're a soul, whether into religion or science or whatever, atheist, you are a physical body and you're also something else, a consciousness, a soul, a spirit. Like, what is that? Why is it here? Because it's here. You're the best in the world at something. Do you actually know what it is? Or like most people, are you just going to die with your music inside you?
Course through life, yeah. No, it is very deep, but it's true, man. In some people, when you say stuff like this to them, it just goes and they don't understand it But I believe in all that, and I haven't found the back layers yet, but I'm sure I will. Meditate, exercise, up early, all that type of stuff. I'm a big believer on getting yourself right, and everyone's here for a reason, and everyone has a purpose. And unfortunately, so many people never ever find it, do they? They just never ever find it. But they're not even aware enough, like you rightly said there. Even the second layer, they're not even aware of any of that other. They're just coasting through life and getting by on them. It's quite sad.
That Buddhist quote, it says, every man, obviously, which means man and woman, but every man lives 2 lives, and the second begins when he realizes he only has one. And it's like, you spend half your life, you spend your first life looking for your purpose, and you spend your second life, or your second half of your life, exploring it and living it and delivering it. And it's not something you can literally just take half an hour to figure out. It's a lifetime's work. But the closer we can get to that every year, the more content that we'll
fulfilled,
feel.
happy. Yeah, definitely. No, I love that, man. I think that's a real great way to wrap it up. Just a couple of final little questions to ask everybody. You did actually half answer one of the questions, but I'm going to answer it anyway. The show's called The Rags to Riches Show. But it's not just about people who've achieved financial success, because you can be rich in multiple different areas. You can be rich in time, monetary, experiences, whatever. But what does being rich mean to you? What does that phrase mean?
Well, because we sort of carved the 2 words out. So if I was to use it as wealth, it's probably like more my terminology. So wealth to me is like freedom of choice, independence, not having to worry about the things that I worried about as a kid, red phone bills and stuff like that. Like, just financial independence, freedom, and just control, really. If I'm ever watching the clock, that's a bad sign, and that only happens once or twice. If that happens once a month, it's a bad month. Like, I never watch the clock. I can be the busiest person in the world, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing to a degree. And when it stops being fun, then when the fun stops, stop. So, to me, it's freedom.
Love that. It's the only thing that we can't get back, right? It's time. You can get the money back if you lose it. You can't get that time back. Love that. Dan, it's been a great episode. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. I find you very interesting. To be honest, it seems that you're doing a lot of different things, and you're clearly switched on and successful in multiple areas. If anybody wants to reach out or find out a bit more about you, follow your story or journey, what's the best way for people to reach out?
The biggest thing I'd recommend for people who want to hear more of this stuff is, if you subscribe to the official Property Entrepreneur podcast, it's now in the top 10 of entrepreneur podcasts in the UK. They're only about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. We release them every Tuesday, and it's me delivering most of them. And I just think you'll get those. If you liked some of those nuggets I gave you, my aim there is just to give people real life-changing nuggets through there. So subscribe to that, listen to that. And then just follow me on social media, either Property Entrepreneur or Daniel Hill on any of the platforms. You'll find me on there, and feel free to reach out.
Love that. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate your time today, and thanks for sharing your content.
Amazing, Terry. All the best of it.
Thanks, mate. Take care.
Cheers, mate.